Across the stars, none chose the disabled alien princess. She lived inside a palace that looked like crystal fire, glowing at night with the light of 1,000 suns. The great empire of her people admired her for her wisdom and kindness, but they did not wish to stand close to her. To them, she was fragile, incomplete. To them, she was not someone to be loved. The princess named Lyra watched the endless sky from her balcony. Her legs no longer carried her since birth, so she moved with the help of a floating chair. But her mind was bright, her laughter gentle, and her dreams as deep as any river. Still, her world felt smaller every year. What hurt her most was not the whispers of nobles who pitied her, but the silence of someone she once cared for. Years ago, a young human visitor named Daniel had been her friend. He spoke to her like she was whole, never once pointing out her weakness. They shared stories late into the night, stories of Earth and its storms, deserts, oceans, and history of people who stood tall even when life tried to break them. But then Daniel left. His mission ended, and he returned to Earth. He promised. He would write to her, but the stars stretched wide between them. She waited weeks, then months. Now it had been years. His voice lived only in her memory, his laugh echoing faintly when the halls of the palace were quiet. Lyra felt distant from him, as if the gulf between planets had stolen away the only person who saw her heart clearly. The empire moved on. Suitors came and went. Many arrived with jewels, with ships, with promises of alliances. Yet when they looked at her, their eyes shifted. They spoke politely, but their proposals vanished once they noticed the floating chair that carried her. One by one, they turned away. Every rejection struck harder than words. She wanted to shout, "I am more than my legs. I am more than my weakness." But the court only whispered. She felt herself shrink, fading into the background of her own. Life at night, she whispered to the stars, "Daniel, where are you? Why did you leave me? Did you forget?" Her heart ached with distance she did not know how to close. Daniel, far away on Earth, thought of her too. The truth was, he never forgot. Every time he walked by the ocean, he remembered her questions about waves. Every time he saw a mountain, he remembered how her eyes shone when he described climbing one. But distance made him hesitate. He worried. What if she had moved on? What if she no longer wished to hear from him? What if reaching out now would only open old wounds? So he stayed silent. And silence grew heavy. One night, during a royal gathering, the emperor declared that the princess would choose a consort from among the noble houses. The hall filled with bright colors, shimmering armor, and proud voices. But as each suitor stepped forward, they faltered. Some gave excuses. Others bowed and left. One by one, they abandoned the moment. Lyra sat in her floating chair, her hands folded tightly. She felt her heart sink. The silence was louder than laughter. None chose her. None would stand beside her. Her eyes fell to the floor, and she felt the old loneliness return. A voice inside her whispered, "No one will ever see you the way he did." But far away, Daniel received the message of the court gathering. He read it twice, then a third time. His chest tightened. He imagined her sitting alone while the galaxy walked away. He remembered the girl who laughed when he told clumsy jokes, who stayed awake with him until dawn sharing stories. He remembered how she asked him once, "Do you think anyone could ever love someone like me?" And he had answered without hesitation, "Yes, I could." Now he wondered why he had stayed silent for so long. Why had he let distance control his heart? Daniel booked passage on the fastest ship he could find. Every star they passed felt like a heartbeat closer. He carried no riches, no fine robes. Only a promise that he would not let her face the galaxy alone. Back in the crystal hall, silence stretched as the nobles looked away. The Emperor's voice rose, asking if anyone would dare to step forward. Lyra closed her eyes. She wanted to vanish into the chair. She wanted to hide from the sting of rejection. Then she heard footsteps, steady, human footsteps echoing against alien crystal. Gasps filled the room. Lyra opened her eyes. Daniel stood there. He looked older, but his eyes were the same. And he bowed not out of pity, but out of respect. His voice carried across the chamber. If none will see her worth, then I will. I stand and I propose. The chamber froze. Nobles whispered in shock. The princess's heart pounded in her chest, tears welling in her eyes. She thought the distance had broken them forever. Yet here he stood, across the stars. And so it was true. Across the stars, none chose the disabled alien princess. One human stood and proposed. The court remained in shock long after Daniel's. Words filled the air. No one had expected a human, an outsider, a visitor from a young and reckless world, to step forward where noble houses had stepped back. Lyra's heart beat like a drum in her chest. She could not believe it was him. Years of silence, of wondering if he had forgotten her, and now he stood tall before the Empire, his voice steady, his gaze fixed on her as if she was the only one in the room. But with joy came doubt. Why had he left her in silence for so long? Why had he not written? And what right did he have to walk back into her life at the very moment when she had been forced to face the galaxy's rejection? The Emperor's voice broke the silence. You human, do you understand the weight of your words? This is no courtly game. Daniel lifted his chin. I understand. The nobles laughed softly among themselves. One whispered, he is reckless. He does not know what he is doing. Another muttered, humans, always chasing emotions instead of reason. But Daniel did not turn his eyes from Lyra. That night, after the court had ended, Lyra sat alone in her chamber. She felt torn between happiness and anger, hope and doubt. She had longed for him for years, and now he had come. But why now? Why not before? The stars glowed through the crystal walls. She whispered to them, as she had done many nights before. Why did he leave? Me alone for so long? Her hands trembled as she remembered the nights of silence, the lonely hours when she thought of him, wondering if he had forgotten. Her heart was heavy, but she also felt a spark, because for the first time in years, she was not invisible. Someone had seen her again. Someone had chosen her. Meanwhile, Daniel walked the silent halls of the palace. He carried no riches, no titles, no noble blood. Only a promise, but inside his chest burned with regret. He remembered the years when he wanted to write to her, but fear held him back. He remembered staring at messages he drafted and never sent. What if she had moved on? What if his words reopened wounds? So he had stayed silent. Now he saw what that silence had done. He wanted to tell her everything, but when the palace guards allowed him to visit her chamber, he hesitated at the door. His hand hovered above the crystal panel, his heart heavy. Will she even want to see me? He wondered. Lyra sat in her chair, staring at the door. She could sense him outside. Her heart pounded. Part of her wanted to call him in, to ask why he had left her in silence for so long. Another part wanted to stay quiet, to protect her heart from breaking again. Finally, the door slid open. Daniel stepped inside slowly, almost shyly. His eyes searched hers, and for a moment, time felt like it had years ago when they were simply two friends talking under the stars. Lyra, he said. Softly. Her throat tightened. She wanted to say 1,000 things, but the first words that escaped were, why did you leave me alone? Daniel's chest tightened. I never wanted to. I thought of you every day. Then why didn't you come? Why didn't you write? Her voice broke, and tears filled her eyes. I thought you forgot me. I thought I was nothing to you. Daniel took a step forward, his voice trembling. You were never nothing to me. I was afraid. Afraid that if I reached out, I would only remind you of your pain. Afraid I had no right to disturb your life. Her hands gripped the arms of her floating chair. So instead, you left me in silence. Do you know how that felt? Daniel lowered his head, empty, the same way it felt for me. The room fell into silence. Only the faint hum of her chair filled the air. Finally, Lyra whispered, I used to wait by the stars, hoping to hear from you. I told myself you would return. But as the years passed, that hope turned into silence. Daniel knelt before her, his eyes shining. I made a mistake. I let distance control me instead of my heart. But I am here now. I came because I could. Not stay away any longer. I came because when I heard they were choosing for you, I couldn't bear the thought of you standing alone. Her eyes softened, but pain still lingered. Do you really mean it, Daniel? Do you truly see me, even now? He met her gaze without wavering. Yes, I see you, not your chair, not your weakness. I see you, the girl who laughed at my foolish stories, the friend who dreamed with me under the stars, the one I could never forget. Something inside, Lyra stirred a flicker of warmth she thought had long died. For so long she felt distant, abandoned, unseen. And now, here was the one person who made her believe she was whole. Yet fear still clung to her heart. She whispered, If I let you close again, will you leave me in silence once more? Daniel shook his head firmly. Never again. I may not have all the answers. I may not be a noble or a king. But I am human, and when humans choose, we hold on. I choose you, Lyra, and I will keep choosing you. Her lips trembled. Tears slipped down her cheeks, but they were not only of sadness, they were of hope. For the first time in years, she felt that maybe she. The next day, the palace was filled with noise. Word had spread across the empire an outsider, a human, had dared to step forward when no noble would. Some were amused, others outraged. Many simply shook their heads. How strange, they said. A young world's man standing where princes would not. Lyra sat quietly in her chamber, her thoughts heavy. She had not slept. Daniel's words from the night before echoed in her mind, his promise that he saw her, that he chose her. Her heart wanted to believe, but her fears whispered otherwise. He had left once. He had been silent for years. How could she be sure he would not vanish again? She felt distant, even though he was now only a few doors away in the guest wing. The distance was no longer measured in stars, but in trust. And trust was harder to bridge than galaxies. Daniel felt the same weight. He walked the palace gardens alone that morning, remembering how Lyra used to laugh at the strange way he described Earth's trees and rivers. He had imagined this moment many times, but now that he was here, he struggled with the same question. How do I show her I will not leave again? He wanted to run to her chamber and swear he would never abandon her. But promises meant little after years of silence. He needed something more, something true. The empire's nobles gave him no peace. They followed him in the halls, mocking softly. Human, do you know what you have done? One sneered. Do you think love is a game of courage? Said another. You are reckless. You do not understand duty, tradition, bloodlines. Daniel listened, his fists clenched at his side. He wanted to shout back, but he kept walking. He was not here for them. He was here for her. That evening, the emperor called for a council. The great crystal hall shone with golden light as nobles gathered. Lyra was brought forward, seated in her floating chair, her face calm but her heart racing. Daniel stood at her side. The emperor's deep voice echoed across the chamber. This human has spoken. He has asked for what others would not. But words are wind. Tell us, Daniel of Earth, why should we accept you? The nobles leaned forward, eager to hear his answer. Some smirked, waiting for him to fail. Daniel swallowed hard. He looked at Lyra, then back at the Emperor, because humans do not measure worth the way you do. A ripple of laughter spread through the nobles. Old words. One shouted. Daniel raised his voice, steady and clear. On Earth, we have seen people rise even when their bodies are broken. We have seen leaders who could not walk but led nations. We have seen thinkers who could not see or hear, yet they gave wisdom to the world. We do not throw them aside. We do not walk away. We stand beside them. The hall quieted. His words cut through the mocking smiles. Daniel turned toward Lyra. His voice softened, but it carried. You look at her and see a weakness. I look at her and see strength. You see a body that cannot walk. I see a mind that never stops dreaming, a heart that still shines after years of rejection. On Earth, we honor that, and I will honor it here. Lyra's chest tightened. His words struck deeper than she expected. For so long she had heard whispers of pity. Now she heard words of respect, but not all were moved. A noble rose, his robes glittering. Fine words, human, but you speak only of your people. This is not Earth. This is the Zilari Empire. What makes you worthy to stand beside a princess of the stars? Daniel turned to him calmly. Because where I come from, worth is not given by birth or wealth. It is proven by choice, and I have chosen her. I will keep choosing her every day, no matter what others say. The chamber fell silent. Even the Emperor studied him closely, as if weighing the truth of his words. Later that night, Lyra sat by her window again. The stars glimmered outside, but her thoughts burned brighter. She whispered, "Why does he say such things? Why does he believe in me when no one else does?" She remembered all the years she felt unseen, her loneliness like a shadow that followed her everywhere. She had wanted to reach across the stars to Daniel, but had not known how. Now he was here, reaching for her instead, yet fear still lingered. What if this was only a moment? What if tomorrow he changed his mind? The distance between them was smaller, but it was still there. Daniel stood outside her chamber door once again, uncertain. He raised his hand to knock and stopped. He wanted to tell her everything, his fear, his regret, his hope, but words were fragile. Finally, he whispered to himself, "One step at a time. Don't let distance win again." He knocked softly. The door opened. Lyra looked at him, her eyes unreadable. For a moment, neither spoke. Then Daniel said simply, "I don't know how to erase the years I was gone, but I want to start again, if you'll let me." Her lips trembled. The silence stretched, heavy and uncertain. Finally, she whispered, "I don't know if I can trust you yet, but I want to try." Daniel smiled faintly, relief flooding him. "Then we'll try together." That night, as the palace slept, two hearts slowly began to bridge the distance that years had built. It was not easy. It was not sudden. But it was hope. And in that hope, the galaxy witnessed something new: humanity's refusal to turn away. Humanity's belief that no soul was unworthy of love. The days after Daniel's declaration were not easy. The Zilari nobles did not forget his words. In the grand halls and quiet gardens, they whispered with sharp tongues, "He is only human, an impulsive creature from a young world. He does not know our traditions. He cannot understand our empire. This is an insult, not a proposal." Lyra heard every word, though she pretended not to. Their whispers pressed against her heart, making her doubt once again. And yet, when she looked at Daniel, she remembered the way his voice had carried through the court. "I have chosen her." and I will keep choosing her. Those words lit a fragile flame inside her. But still, she felt the years between them, a gap that could not be bridged in a single night. Daniel felt that distance too. He often walked the palace corridors alone, thinking of how easy it had been to talk with Lyra years ago. Back then, they had laughed freely, with no weight of crowns or expectations. Now every conversation felt like balancing on glass. He wanted to tell her more, to share his fears, his regrets, his longing, but each time he opened his mouth, he held back. What if I say the wrong thing? What if I push her farther away? The silence between them was smaller now, but it was still silence. One evening, the emperor called another council. The court glittered with light as nobles gathered once again. Daniel was summoned to stand before them. Lyra sat by her father's side, her floating chair steady, her face calm. But inside she trembled. The emperor's voice rumbled like distant thunder. Human, the court remains divided. Some believe your words, others do not. If you wish to stand beside my daughter, you must prove more than affection. You must prove your strength. Murmurs filled the hall. Some nobles nodded eagerly, expecting the human to fail. Others smirked, waiting for him to be humiliated. Daniel looked at the emperor, then at Lyra. He could see the worry in her eyes. His own heart pounded. He was no soldier, no prince. He had no armies, no riches, no powerful name. But he had something else. He took a slow breath and spoke. Your Majesty, I cannot fight like your warriors. I cannot offer riches like your nobles. But I can show you something greater. I can show you the human heart. The nobles laughed, but Daniel raised his voice. On earth, we are not the strongest, nor the fastest, nor the oldest race. We are fragile in many ways. And yet, we endure. We climb mountains, though they should be impossible. We cross oceans, though the waves try to drown us. We rise again and again, even when the world breaks us. That is what makes us strong, not our bodies, but our will. The hall grew quieter. Some sneers faded into thoughtful silence. Daniel turned to Lyra. And when I see her, I see that same strength. You look at her and see weakness. I look at her and see endurance. She has faced rejection her entire life, yet she still stands before you, still dares to hope. That is the strength of a queen. That is why I will not leave her side. Lyra's throat tightened. She had heard him defend her before, but this time felt different. He was not only speaking to the court, he was speaking to her. He was telling her she was more than her loneliness, more than her broken body. For years, she had carried silence like a cloak. Now his words began to lift it away. Still, she felt the old ache. Part of her whispered, he left once. What if he leaves again? After the council ended, Lyra returned to her chamber in silence. Daniel followed at a respectful distance. When the guards left them alone, he stepped closer. You don't believe me yet, do you? He asked quietly. She looked away, her hands gripping the arms of her chair. I want to. But the distance between us is still there. You don't know how heavy the years felt for me. Daniel's chest tightened. I do know. I felt them too. Every day I thought of you. Every day I wanted to reach out. But I was afraid you would not want me anymore. Her voice broke. And I was afraid you had forgotten me. Afraid I meant nothing to you. The silence that followed was sharp, almost painful. But then Daniel knelt beside her chair. His voice was steady, though his eyes glistened. Lyra, I can't erase the years we lost. But I can promise you this. I will not let fear silence me again. I will not walk away. I will stand, even when others laugh. Even when they doubt me. I will stand, because humans don't give up on the ones they care about. Her eyes met his. She saw no hesitation, no pity, only truth. That night, Lyra sat by her window again. She looked at the stars and whispered softly, "He has changed." The palace was quiet that morning, but inside Lyra's heart there was no peace. She sat in her floating chair by the window, staring at the silver sky. The stars seemed so far away, like Daniel had been for so long. He had spoken bravely in court. He had defended her when others turned away. Yet she could not silence the echo of old pain. Years of loneliness could not be healed in only a few days. She thought of the long nights when she whispered his name, wondering if he remembered her. She thought of the ache in her chest when no letter came, when silence was her only answer. That distance had shaped her, and it was not easy to let go. Daniel felt the same struggle. He had spoken boldly, but speaking did not erase his years of absence. Each time he saw the doubt in her eyes, his heart hurt. He wished he could take away her sadness, but he knew only time and truth could do that. So he stayed close but careful. He did not press her with promises. Instead, he chose small things. He walked with her in the gardens. He listened to her thoughts. He shared quiet stories of Earth, of people who had lost everything but still found the strength to rebuild. And slowly, very slowly, she began to respond. One afternoon, as they passed through the crystal gardens, Daniel asked gently, "Why? Don't you speak in court?" "You have a voice, Lyra. A strong one." She shook her head. "They don't want to hear me. They only see the chair." Daniel stopped and looked at her firmly. "Then let them see more. Let them see the woman I see. Her." Throat tightened. "And if they laugh?" "Then let them laugh," Daniel said, his voice steady. "Humans have been laughed at many times. We were called reckless, weak, unworthy. But we didn't stop. We rose anyway. That's what it means to be human. And it's what I see in you." Lyra looked at him for a long moment. His words stirred something inside her, something she had buried. Maybe it was time to speak. The chance came sooner than she expected. That evening, the emperor held another council. Nobles filled the chamber with their bright robes and sharp words. They spoke not of love, but of politics, of alliances, of strength. And again, whispers spread about the human standing at the princess's side. "He cannot last. His words are dust. The princess will remain silent, as always. She has no power here." Lyra's hands tightened on the arms of her chair. For years she had listened quietly as others spoke for her, around her, over her. She had told herself her silence kept the peace. But now she saw Daniel standing alone, defending her again, his voice calm but firm, and she felt something rise in her chest. Not sadness, not fear, something else. She raised her head. "My voice matters too," she said. The chamber fell silent. All eyes turned to her. Her heart pounded, but she did not stop. "You call me weak," she said, her voice trembling but clear. "You say no one should stand beside me, but you are wrong. I am more than this chair, more than my broken legs. I have listened to your voices for years, and I have carried your rejection in silence. No longer." A murmur spread across the nobles. Some frowned, others looked uneasy. Lyra's eyes shone with unshed tears. "If a human from a young world can see me, why cannot my own people? If he can cross the stars to stand with me, why do you step away? You call him reckless, but I call him brave. He chose me when all of you turned your backs." Daniel stood frozen, his chest tight with pride. He had wanted her to speak, but he had not expected her words to burn so brightly. The emperor leaned forward, his face unreadable. Lyra continued, her voice stronger now. "I will no longer hide. I will no longer let silence speak for me. I am not ashamed of who I am. And if you cannot see my worth, then perhaps it is time you opened your eyes." The hall was silent. Some nobles shifted uncomfortably. Others looked at her with new respect. Daniel stepped closer, placing his hand over his heart in silent support. In that moment, Lyra felt the distance between them shrink just a little more. For so long, she had felt alone in her silence. Now, by finding her voice, she felt him beside her, not only in words, but in truth. That night, in her chamber, Lyra sat by the window again. The stars no longer seemed so far. Daniel stood near, watching quietly. "You were incredible," he said softly. She looked at him, her lips trembling with a small smile. "I was terrified, but I thought of what you said, that humans rise even when they are laughed at, and I thought, maybe I can rise too." Daniel's voice was gentle but strong. "You can, and you did." She lowered her gaze. "I still feel the years between us. The silence is not gone. But today, for the first time, I felt like I could reach across it." Daniel's chest warmed. He knelt beside her chair once again. "Then let's keep reaching. Together." Her eyes softened, and for the first time, she did not feel like the distant, forgotten princess. She felt like someone seen, someone chosen not just by him, but by herself. Outside the window, the stars glimmered, and in the quiet of the night, hope grew stronger than silence. For across the stars, humanity's gift was not only endurance. It was the courage to stand, the courage to speak, and the courage to hope where others gave up. And now, that courage lived in her 2. The palace was brighter after Lyra spoke in court. Whispers still followed her, but they carried a new tone. Some nobles now looked at her with respect, though others with cold suspicion. Yet inside her heart, shadows still lingered. She had spoken bravely once, but would her voice last? Would Daniel's hand remain in hers, or would he too drift away? The old fear returned like a storm cloud waiting at the edge of the sky. Daniel noticed the change in her. She smiled less in the gardens. She fell quiet during their walks. At night, he saw her staring at the stars, her eyes heavy with unspoken thoughts. One evening, he asked, "Lyra, what troubles you?" She did not answer at first. She kept her gaze fixed on the sky. Finally, she whispered, "I'm afraid." "Afraid? Of what?" Daniel asked softly. Her voice trembled. "Of losing you again." Daniel's heart tightened. "You won't lose me." She turned to him then, her eyes wet. "You say that now. But so many left me. So many turned away. Even you." She stopped, unable to finish. Daniel lowered his head. He could not deny the truth. Years had passed when he was not there. Years when she had been alone. And now the distance between them felt wider than the stars. That night, Daniel walked alone through the palace halls. He thought of her words, her pain. He could not change the past. He could not erase the time they had lost. But he could show her the strength of human hope, the kind that never gave up, even when broken. The next morning, he returned with a plan. "Come with me," he said. She frowned but followed as her chair glided beside him. He led her not to the gardens, not to the council hall, but to the oldest wing of the palace, a place rarely visited. Dust lined the walls, and broken windows let streams of light fall on cracked floors. "What is this place?" she asked. Daniel smiled gently. "A place forgotten, like how you felt. But forgotten doesn't mean lost." He knelt and brushed the dust away from a faded mural on the wall. It showed her people long ago, warriors and builders, reaching for the stars. "See this?" he said. "Your people had strength once. They still do. And so do you. The years may have hidden it, but it's still here, just waiting." Lyra stared at the mural, her heart stirring. Daniel's voice grew softer. "It's the same with us. I was gone, and that hurt. But the bond we had, it's not gone, It's here, waiting. We just have to rebuild it." Her eyes filled with tears. "But how? I don't know how to reach across the silence." Daniel looked at her, his voice firm. "Then we start small. We speak. We listen. We choose each other every day. That's what humans do. We fail. We fall apart, but we keep trying. And one day, the silence becomes a bridge instead of a wall." For a long moment, she said nothing. Then slowly, her hand lifted from the armrest of her chair. She reached out, hesitating. Daniel took her hand gently, holding it with quiet strength. That touch broke something inside her. For years she had felt untouchable, distant, untouchable, unwanted. Now his hand was warm, steady, real. She let herself cry. Softly at first, then harder, until the years of silence poured out of her. Daniel did not let go. He simply held her hand and let her grief wash over him. And when the tears slowed, she whispered, "I don't want to lose you again." He met her gaze. "Then don't, because I'm not leaving." From that day, their bond began to grow stronger. It was not easy. Doubt still haunted her. Pain still whispered in the dark. But each time, Daniel answered with hope. When she feared, he reminded her of the courage she had already shown. When she fell silent, he listened until she found words again. When the distance felt too wide, he reminded her that humans had crossed. Stars before they could cross this too. One evening, as the sun set behind the crystal towers, Lyra looked at him and asked softly, "Why do humans never give up?" Daniel smiled faintly. "Because we know what it feels like to be broken. And we know the only way forward is to keep trying, even when it hurts. Especially then." She thought about his words long after he left her chambers. She thought about the murals, the history of her people, and the courage she had felt when she spoke in court. And slowly she began to believe him. The distance was still there. The sadness still pressed heavy in her chest. But for the first time, she felt like maybe it could change. Maybe silence was not forever. And deep inside, a new thought grew. If humans can hope even in their darkest hours, then so can I. That night, as Daniel stood at her side once more, she whispered words she had never said before. "Thank you."